Welcome to You Make the Difference. I'm Wanda Walker, and I have as my guest today Jeff Chandler. Jeff is the pastor of Southcrest Church in Newnan, and he's planning to start a satellite in LaGrange very soon. And we're so excited to have you here because I know that there are people in LaGrange that are very excited about what you're doing. So I want to start off by saying welcome to LaGrange.
Yeah, we're glad to be here.
Yes, and also I want you to tell us, what is Southcrest Church and how is it different from other churches?
Sure. Well, to do that, I kind of have to kind of tell the journey of how I even got to this place.
Okay.
Because I really thought that I was going to be a student pastor my entire life. I was in student ministry for 13 years. My last student ministry, I was in First Baptist Woodstock, where Johnny Hunt was the pastor, and we saw an incredible move of God. We went from like 100 to over 1,000 high school students, went from like 70 to 500 middle school students. So every week we're averaging about 1,500 middle school and high school kids, and
yes,
just seeing everything you could have dreamed come true, standing on the stages of all the conferences, and you're speaking to thousands of teenagers, and and we really kind of built it going after the kids that nobody else wanted. We thought if all these churches were going to go after these kids, then they're doing a good job, then let's create a student ministry that's not in our community, and let's go after the kids that nobody wants.
Yes.
And so God blessed it, and we saw thousands of kids come to know Christ, and so it was in that movement, and it kind of happened in my two prior student ministries as well, that we would be reaching hundreds and hundreds of kids, and it always seemed the first couple of years it was go, go, go. And then when all these kids started showing up in droves and actually acting like non-Christians,
Acting like non-Christians?
Yeah, because that's what non-Christians do.
Okay.
That's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Stay with me,
okay,
all right?
all right.
Yeah. And so when all the chaos would show up, and that's what they do.
Oh, yeah.
Like I would have my Wednesday night thing, and they'd be hundreds of kids smoking out in the parking lot, waiting to come in.
Yes.
Well, then suddenly deacons and those kind of people didn't want that kind of stuff around, and so the first 2 years was always go, 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 and the third year always seemed to be whoa, whoa, whoa. And so 3 different times in my 13 years as a student pastor, all 3 churches, that came to be the experience. And so I just began praying and realized that the only way that we're going to be able to effectively create a church with a staff that had the freedom to truly reach the next generation.
Yes.
To contextualize the gospel to that generation, which is different than contextualize it to us.
Yes.
That the only way that was going to happen is if I was the pastor.
Yes.
Because the buck stopped here.
That's right.
So then I really began to pray, because the last thing I wanted to be was a pastor. Even today, the last thing I want to be is the pastor. Any chance I get to hang out with the teenagers, I take it. I go to camp just to hang out. This summer we were at the lake. I went to the lake just to hang out. These new staff that we hire from other churches, they're always kind of puzzled when I show up to go tubing.
Yes.
They're like, "What are you doing here?" I said, "I'm here to hang out. We're going tubing." And but we've created Southcrest as a church to really do whatever it takes to reach the next generation.
Yes.
And we're very committed to that. And so I've hired a staff that I have given the freedom and the power to do that. So as I was coming to that place in my life, it was in 1999 where I was really sensing that it was time for me to become a church planter. And it was really about 5 years before the church plant movement became sexy, is what I call it.
Okay.
Now there's seminars everywhere, there's books everywhere,
How to plant
everybody's planting churches. Back then, I really only knew one person that was planting a church, and it was a friend of mine by the name of Brian Beloy, and he planted a church in Paulding County called Westridge, and he's done a phenomenal job up there. And so when we got ready to do this, I kind of knew how Southern Baptists ran their churches, but I knew I didn't want our church to be this super Southern Baptist church. And so the Bible says you have not because you ask not.
That's right.
So through conferences that I spoke at, I actually had access to Andy Stanley's phone number. You know, they say you're always 3 phone calls away from any person you want to talk to.
Yeah, that's right.
So I told my wife, I said, I said, I just greatly respect Andy and what he's doing, and I've never really got behind the scenes and to learn how they think and why they do what they do. And I said, I'm going to call him. She goes, man, you're crazy. You're going to just pick up the phone and call Andy Stanley. Like, Andy's going to go, oh, hey, Jeff.
Yeah.
I went,
yeah.
Why not?
I mean, if he's a godly man, why not?
Why
That's
not?
right.
Yeah. So I called my friend who actually knew a friend who had his number. I got it, and I called, and of course it was his assistant that answered it. And I said, hey, told her who I was, and I said I would love to have 30 minutes with Andy, just to talk and kind of tell him what's going on in my life and get any insight from him.
Yes.
So she said, all right, well, he's a busy man. I can't promise you anything, and we'll get back with you. Well, 30 minutes later, my cell phone rings, and it was my flip phone. Remember those?
Yes.
Flipped it open.
Yes.
And so I answered, and it's like, Jeff? Yeah, this is Andy Stanley. And I looked at my wife and I went, Andy Stanley.
God's doing great and mighty things.
Yeah, I said, the prayers of a righteous man availeth much.
That's right.
And so anyway, so we set up a lunch, and I sat down with him and just shared my story, like I just literally almost what I just shared with you, word for word.
Yeah.
And said, I just want to create a church that does that. And I said, I want to create a church that not only goes after teenagers that nobody wants, I want to create a church that goes after adults that nobody wants.
Yes.
I said, I want to create that church. And Andy said, well, it's funny, we're having a meeting. He goes, I normally don't call people back as quick as I called you, especially people I don't know.
Yes.
And he said, but the Sunday before you called me on that Monday, I just met with my elder board. I think you might call them leadership team or management team. Some people call them deacon boards, but that's his leadership inner circle. He said, and they had just challenged me to go find 5 young guys to pour my life into to help them start churches.
Wow.
He said, so the next day I get this phone call from you asking.
Were you the first?
I was, the very first one.
Yeah.
And so he and I became friends through that. And for, I say friends, I mean, we're ministry acquaintances. He's the mentor, I'm the mentoree. We're not like, hey, you want to...
Yeah. He doesn't go tubing with you yet.
Yeah.
Not yet.
He didn't meet me for tubing. Yeah, no, he didn't. Not that he wouldn't. So, but for 2 years, we met once a month, and he mentored me and poured his life into me, and man, kept me from making a lot of dumb mistakes. And because, like I say, back in '99, there weren't a lot of church plant conferences. There was not a lot of these networks that there are now that ensure the success of all these, and I didn't know of any.
Yes.
At that time, to do the Baptist one, you had to go through this seminary program, and it was going to be years down the road. And but through that, then I went to a couple of key people, and Ike Reichert is an old mentor friend of mine, and he was working at a church in the North Atlanta, planted one, North Star, and then there's Woodstock, and then there was a couple other churches I've been student pastor at. I just kind of went to them and said, here's what I'm doing. Is it something you believe in enough that you'd invest in and give me, So long story short, I came back to a meeting with Andy and then with Johnny and with Ike, with my key 3 guys, and they all 3 agreed to give me X amount of dollars.
Yes.
And basically, North Point gave me $10,000, Woodstock gave me $3,600, and North Star gave me $3,600.
Wow.
So with that money, and then my wife and I wiped out our savings, wiped out my retirement, wiped out our kids' college funds,
wow.
and started Southcrest with their money and my peanuts. We had about, about 25,000 is all we had.
Yes.
I went 2 months without a paycheck, and we started out, I had to start a lawn company. I cut grass on the side. My wife and I cleaned apartments and did whatever we could, to plant the church. But within a year, 2 years of us getting the church going, I just really sensed, it's kind of like the 10 lepers that got healed and only one ever went back and thanked Jesus.
Yes.
And I just really felt like I needed to go back to these men, those 3 that had financially invested in us, because we were on our feet after about 2 years. And And so I wrote all of them a letter, and I gave them all their money back plus interest.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I think Andy's, I sent him back 11 grand, and it's 10,000 plus $1,000 interest. And basically the letter said this: it said, thank you so much for the investment that you men have had in my life personally.
Yes.
But also thank you for your church taking the risk on a guy who'd never planted a church.
Yes.
And then I said, my prayer for you that you would take this money and go give it to someone else who has a dream in their heart and no money in their pocket.
Yes.
Well, about 5 years later, I'm meeting with one of Andy Stanley's strategic partners, who that's what they're changing how they do it now, but at the time a strategic partner, they're different multi-sites, the way North Point does it. And I'm having lunch with Chris Patton, who's the pastor of one of the plants of Andy's church. And so we're talking about, I said, so how does it all work? You know, how does it work? He goes, well, you should know, you started it.
Huh.
I went,
What?
I said, how did I start it? I said, I said, Andy mentored me, but I'm not an official North Point plant. He goes, no. That whole thing between you and Andy, and then when you paid him the money back with interest, he said, that's where Andy got the whole idea for this whole concept.
Wow.
They shared at the seminar.
Yeah.
So Andy took what happened between me and him, and so that's how he created his networking, is he gives his people the money to start it, and then they pay it back,
Yes.
so they can take that money and go give it to somebody else.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
So multiplication right there.
Yeah. So,
How did you choose Noonan?
you know, it's really interesting. I'm a South Side boy. I grew up in Clayton County and Fayette County
Okay.
my whole life, and lived there my whole life, and then went away to a couple of churches. But my wife and I just began praying, and there was another friend of mine who was planning a second campus of his church in northern Coweta County. And so I was taking a year to try to figure out really what it was God wanted me to do. My mother-in-law's cancer had come out of remission, and so she was living with us, and it was really, really bad, and we had to really take care of her. And so this friend of mine came to me and said, hey, while you're going through all this, would you be willing to help me kind of get this second campus started? He goes, and you can stay where you are and commute, take care of your mother-in-law and everything. I said, yeah, I can do that. And so for a whole year, commuted back and forth down here to the Coweta County, Noonan area, and began seeing learning the people, seeing what was here, was not here. And this church was wanting to plant another traditional type church. And so while I was down here, I kept thinking, well, if I was here,
Yes.
Yes. I'd be looking for what's not here. And when I looked at Noonan, here's what I saw. There was one church that was doing a phenomenal job being seeker-sensitive model.
Yes.
That everything about Sunday morning is geared at non-Christians. It's basically a Willow Creek model. And they're doing a great job, still are doing a good job. And then there were a lot of traditional churches, First Baptist, First Methodist, and those type churches, and they were good at being traditional. But there was nobody that seemed to find the balance between how do you hold on to the tradition of our faith and the heritage of our faith, and how do you become progressive in knowing that God is doing a new thing.
Yes.
That God still writes songs.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yes. It's like everybody wants to say, God quit writing songs 400 years ago. Quit writing sermons 400 years ago. Or quit giving ideas for new ways to do ministry 400 years ago. So, but there was nobody doing that. And so this church really decided they wanted to stick that model. And so I just told them, I said, well, I really believe God wants me to, plant a church. And I said, I just don't know if, because they say, why don't you be the pastor of our second campus? I'm like, because this isn't what I would do.
Yes.
And so we were trying to decide, do we stay here and plant a church? And then there was an opportunity for me to go back in student ministry, and be on this conference circuit and speak at conferences and do consulting to young student pastors. And so this group of about 12 people, in Noonan came to us and said, we really believe, we've heard what you've been saying behind the scenes, that if you were here, this is what you would do. And we believe that's what this area needs. Would you do it? And I was so torn because I had two little girls, and we were living in an apartment. By then we'd moved down there thinking we might, you know. And I said, I tell you what, I said, I will help you develop this concept if you will also let me travel and speak and do the conferences and everything. And they said, deal. So for 8 months, we met in the corner of Catfish Hollow in a catfish restaurant.
Oh, really?
And we developed just the foundation of our church and the type church we were going to be, the type church that we were not going to be. And we would tell everybody, you know, this Sunday, we would meet on Sunday because it just kind of was church day. And we say, but we're not having services, so don't invite friends like, hey, come to my church service.
Yes.
If you invite people, say, if you want to be a part of launching a church that looks like this, meet us on Sunday morning. So literally what I would do every Sunday morning, some friends from my student ministry days would come in and lead acoustic worship. I would do a short devotion, and then we'd spend the next hour talking about the type church we were going to be or not going to be. Now back then, I called it trying to find people who want to start a church.
Yes.
Now there's official terms for it. I was developing my launch team.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the new phrase now.
Yes.
We didn't know it back then. It was called, can you hang out with me at a catfish place?
Yes.
And, so through that, I ended up taking a trip to speak at a conference out in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And I asked my buddy, I said, that brought me out there, I said, I'll make a deal with you. I said, I will do this whole thing for free if you'll find me a place that I can be alone for a week during the day. I'll come in the evening, do anything and everything you want me to do. And I'll speak, I'll train, whatever. I said, but I need to be left alone all day long. So I took a friend with me, and I said, man, your only job is to pray all day long while I'm in here alone with God.
Yes.
Had a bunch of material shipped to me while I was there. And so I spent every day fasting and praying and going, God, what is it that you want us to be? I know you don't want us to go there and create another of what's already there.
Yes.
Because there's a group of people that they will never reach. And it's obvious because they're there. Both types of churches are there, and then there's hundreds of thousands of people that will not attend them.
Right.
So what is it we're supposed to create? And I said, God, I know it has to be a huge focus on children and teenagers because that's just in my heart. I do know that. And it is us going after the kind of people that a lot of people don't want, And so from that, God led me to Luke chapter 4, verses 18 and 19. And it's Jesus reading from the scroll of Isaiah, and it's being quoted in Luke. It says this, the Spirit of the Lord is on me, because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, to set the oppressed free, and to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. And we just continued to pray over that, because I didn't want our church to be built on a philosophy of ministry or a certain style. Styles come and go.
Yes.
Philosophies change, whatever the new book that comes out or whoever's hot speaking on the speaking circuit. And you see these young leaders are changing their church about every 2 years, and like nobody knows where we're going.
Yes.
And I said, God, I want to create a compass and set a course that we'll never change from. That we will always be looking for more innovative and creative ways to do it. But the main cell will never change.
Right.
And so we've built our whole church on this verse.
Yes.
And as we began to really study this verse, we came up with what we call the 4 Gs. That we believe that the Christian life in Southcrest Church is about sharing the gospel with those who are lost.
Yes.
Those who need Jesus. And then it's about extending grace. Grace to those who've blown it.
Yeah.
Even if we tell people, even if you blew it up yourself.
Yes.
Because that's where I thought here that he sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind. That people are in bondage to their shame and their guilt. And he's saying, I want to set people free from that. And it comes after good news for the poor, which is the gospel.
Right.
So it's a separate piece. And then the recovery of sight for the blind. Well, if you're recovering your sight, what does that mean? If you're recovering it, it means at one time you had it.
Yes.
So it's finding the people who at one time believed this stuff and walked with the Lord And it's like the Apostle Paul said, he said, who cut in on you? You were running a great race.
That's right.
And you go find those people who used to really walk with the Lord that aren't anymore, and you sit down with them, and it's so sad. 9 times out of 10, it's never Jesus. They'll go, well, you know, I was in so-and-so church, and then this happened.
It hurt.
Right. I got hurt. Or they hurt my mom.
Yes.
And you look at them and go, man, Jesus is so greater than that. Your spiritual potential is so more valuable than that.
Yes.
Don't you dare let the enemy, you know, or the person who's went through the divorce and feels like they got the scarlet letter on their forehead and like it's the unpardonable sin. And it's like, no, it's not the unpardonable sin.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, are there consequences for sin? Sure, but it's not unpardonable.
Uh-huh.
You know, I mean, God can forgive everything. There is no sin that's more powerful than the blood of Jesus.
That's right.
Period. You know, and so we really made a commitment to go find all these, what we call de-churched, and go, God wants you back.
That's right.
You know, he's standing on the porch, I mean, every day, waiting for you to come back.
Uh-huh.
I said, in the Garden of Eden, when they hid, God's first statement was, where are you? It wasn't because he didn't know where they were.
That's right.
He was calling out to let them know, I miss you. I want you.
Yes.
You know, and so we just, through this passage, we just came up with gospel, grace, and then growth in that to help people understand and know the knowledge of this is how God feels about you.
Yes.
And then generosity in that if God is this generous, no matter how many times you mess up and blow it up, he wants you back. He'll help you repair it. He's always there for you. He always wants you back. You know, he's always pouring out his favor on you. Then we should be the generous people.
That's right.
And so that's Southcrest is reaching our community, reaching South Atlanta, one relationship at a time, through gospel, grace, growth, and generosity.
That's great. Now, I remember seeing on Facebook, I believe, a video about your coming to LaGrange.
Mm-hmm.
And in that video, it says that you saw a hunger here.
Yes.
I want you to tell about the hunger that you saw and also what you've experienced as you stepped into LaGrange.
Okay. It was really interesting because on paper it made no sense, but I would always drive to LaGrange to buy cars or get my car's tires or whatever, and it was a lot closer. At the time, there was a couple places in Newnan, or Union City, and but for some reason, I mean, I know now.
Yes.
I'm driving all the way to LaGrange to, you know, either go to the Nissan dealership or to the Toyota dealership because those are the type 2 cars we normally get. And so every time I would drive down here, you know, I would just really sense in my spirit something about this city. And so at first I just didn't know, you know, is that God saying, beware, you know, or, you know what I'm saying? Or is it the Holy Spirit going, open your eyes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What year was that? What year did you begin?
This was probably 2001.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And so for 7 years, I would drive down here, and I met Mike over at LaGrange Toyota and became friends with him. And through that, met David Blanton with Realtree, and now he's a friend of mine. But just met a couple of those guys, but I just started, instead of just coming down here when I got my oil change, I would say, can I borrow one of your loaner cars? And I would just drive around the city and pray. And then I started, you know, once a month I would just drive down here anyway and pray over the city.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah, just praying for salvation.
Yes.
I would pray. I'm praying even as I pray now for God to bless all the churches in this city that are preaching the truth.
Right.
That God, if they're preaching the truth, God bless them, because I want to see all of God's churches grow.
Right.
Anytime we see a church die, every pastor and every Christian in America should grieve. I mean, this is not a competition.
No.
We are on the same team.
Yes.
I totally believe in what John Wesley said, the founder of the Methodist Church. And his statement back when he was in England, he said, if your heart beats for Christ, put your hand in mine.
Yes. Yes.
Because here's what we both know. We could bring a person in here that have a whole lot more letters after their name than I have after my name theologically. And they could prove that sign gifts are true. We could bring in another godly man or woman that have a whole lot of other letters after their name, and they could come in here and prove sign gifts are dead. And they both use the Bible to prove it.
Yes.
We can bring somebody in here, they can prove pre-trib, mid-trib, post-trib, you know.
Right.
They can prove all that.
Yes.
We can bring them in, one can prove election, other one can prove free will. I'm telling you, we got godly scholars on both sides that could come in here and prove both sides right.
Yes.
And they still do it, right?
Yes.
Well, we've just decided that we're going to focus on the 99% of the Bible that we all agree on. I'm just not going to give the rest of my life to arguing over stuff that we're never going to discover this side of heaven.
That's right.
I tell people, if you want to sit down and talk to me personally, I love talking about it, but I'm not going to build a church on it.
Yes.
That's not going to be the hill we die on, Southcrest.
Yes.
Ours is going to be reaching South Atlanta one relationship at a time through gospel, grace, growth, and generosity. And the other thing that we do in it, we are committed to reaching forward and reaching back at the same time. Reaching forward and being progressive, reaching back and holding on to the heritage of our faith. And when I came begin praying over LaGrange, I realized that was a great need here, a church that was just completely surrendered to the next generation and who was willing to be progressive, but also hold on to the ancient of our faith and make sure we die on the right hill. And that is just getting people to Jesus.
Yes.
And that's it.
Yes.
That's it.
Okay, we have about a minute and a half left, and I just want you to say anything to the people of LaGrange that God lays on your heart.
All right.
All right.
Here's what I can say. If anything you've heard today has resonated in your spirit or struck something in your heart, we would love to have you come visit our campus in Newnan and to get a real feel for what we're bringing to LaGrange. We already have 13 life groups that meet all over this city, so you can easily get into one of our life groups. And what we're planning on doing this fall is launching a LaGrange campus. But if you want to see now what we're bringing, just come to Southcrest Newnan or go to our website at southcrest.tv. And we look forward to locking arms with you and reaching South Atlanta for Jesus.
Okay, and if they come to LaGrange for the launch, where would that be?
Well, we're in the process right now. We have 2 places that we're trying to decide between the 2, and but it will be a live satellite feed, and to where it'll be live from the Newnan campus, and then sometimes I will be here live, and it'll be simulcast back to the Newnan campus. So I'll be at one or either campus every Sunday.
Okay. Well, thank you, Jeff, for coming. We're
Honored to be
excited
here.
about having you in LaGrange.
Thank you. We're glad to be here.
And again, we just say welcome.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for having me on your
And thank you
show.
for watching You Make the Difference, because you truly do.
Got a promise from heaven. It's a year of replevin. Got a promise from heaven.